Less than 2 weeks to hammer out strong disagreements and renegotiate the spending bill to keep the government open. Our panel's back with me. And Bill, in the previous panel, you had alluded to all the stuff that remains outstanding that they have to deal with in January.
Yeah, the Dreamers, well, they have to keep the government open. They have to pass the immigration legislation. I think there's a March deadline on that. At least the president says there is. They should try to work that out. The defense hawks, this was not reported much, were extremely unhappy with the extension. They want a real defense budget so the Pentagon can plan for a year and get some more spending. That didn't happen in the CR. So there's an awful lot of issues sitting there to be resolved. And what is the deadline now, January 19th, something like that?
And the White House is certainly bracing for that. They've already said that they're going to meet with House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell the first week of 2018 once they're back to really go over what their legislative priorities are for 2018. But we heard from the president today in the Oval Office. He thinks infrastructure is going to be really easy to pass. He said that's why they waited to tackle that one after they tried health care and then tax reform, because he thinks he's going to get a lot of bipartisan support on this. And he really gave this message today that he thinks it's going to be something really easy for them to do in 2018.
Do you buy that? I mean, I've heard Mark McKinnon, who was an advisor to George W. Bush, told me that actually he thinks it's the opposite. Because they did all the tough stuff and the president kept poking his finger in the eyes of the Democrats, infrastructure is now going to be much, much tougher, whereas if he'd started with it, he would have a much bigger advantage right now.
And apparently that was on the advice of Paul Ryan, the speaker. The president is inexperienced. Speaker Ryan is very experienced, and I think gave the president terrible advice to open up on the most divisive and difficult things. It should be easy to do infrastructure. Everybody drives. Everybody's concerned about our bridges, and we don't want our kids drinking water polluted with lead. The problem is the tax bill should have been easy, too. Ronald Reagan's tax cut had a Democratic co-sponsor. President Bush, George W. Bush's tax cut had Democratic co-sponsors. Not just votes, co-sponsors. Not a single Democrat could they get on board on this thing. And it would have been so easy. You just got to work with them a little bit. The infrastructure bill, at least the rumors I hear, is going to be another corporate deal. Not real infrastructure fixing up our water systems and roads and bridges, but instead a lot of toll roads, so that German and Spanish corporations can make a lot of money. And toll roads are fine where people are prosperous and they need them. I'm not against toll roads. But you go to where Trump voters live, you know, and they don't need tolls. They wouldn't tolerate tolls. They wouldn't be able to afford tolls because they don't make a profit in rural America. And so the worry among Democrats is, again, they're going to come with something that should be bipartisan, but they're going to make it a giveaway to corporations.
Bill, they don't have money to pay for it. I mean, the whole point of combining infrastructure and the tax bill was you use some of the money for the tax reform, closing the loopholes to pay for infrastructure. I think they've used up everything they have. It's a good point.
You mentioned the Dreamers also, and I've heard from progressive Democrats who are very disappointed that the Democrats, they think the Democratic leadership, Pelosi and Schumer, blinked that they had Trump where they needed him. He didn't want to have a government shutdown. And they should have insisted. Do you agree? I mean, I mean, I know that's not. Let me not ask you. You're a reporter. Let me ask Paul. Do you agree? Did the Democrats screw the pooch on this one? Should they have insisted on Dreamers?
No, is my short answer. Because the new deadline is January 19th. That is, by my math, 11 days before the State of the Union address. They have a lot more leverage then. It is really difficult to furlough federal employees going into Christmas. I mean, that's just particularly cruel. I think the Republicans politically would have lost by that, but still, you're hurting people. And so I think it's probably wise that they're going to have maximum leverage going up against that State of the Union address. That is always every president's best day of the year, when he commands the stage uninterrupted and there's no pesky reporters shouting questions at him. So if I'm the White House, I want to clear the decks before my guy gets up there to give that State of the Union. So on the 19th, when the funding runs out, Democrats will have enormous leverage.
So as Paul and I were discussing off air, maybe President Trump would like to have the government shut down because then the Muller investigation does that. Isn't that true? I mean, don't you think?
I think FBI personnel are probably considered
essential. Counsel, that would be interesting. The Republicans in Congress will probably insist that it's not essential. There's so much in the Trump these days. You know?
Caitlin, I want to ask you about this because it's been so difficult to be a reporter this year because there are, for the first time, I mean, politicians often lie, but we've never had so many discernible facts be disputed in 1 year period of time that I can recall. Former Congressman Pete Hoekstra is now the U.S. ambassador to the Netherlands, and I want to play an interesting exchange he had with a Dutch reporter.
At the point you mentioned in a debate that there are no-go zones in the Netherlands and that cars and politicians are being set on fire in the Netherlands.
I didn't say that. That is actually an incorrect statement. Yeah, we would call it fake news.
Is that
I never said that.
All right, Ambassador Huckster says he never said that. Let's check the tape.
Chaos in the Netherlands. There are cars being burned. There are politicians that are being burned. And yes, there are no-go zones in the Netherlands.
It's so on brand for this year that I just had to laugh a little when I saw it. But it really shows you what reporters are supposed to do is hold politicians accountable for what they say. But when you confront one with what he said, or someone who's an ambassador, a very high position, and then he denies that he said it, and then he denies his own denial, he denied that he called it fake news, just really shows you where we're at in this political climate and how dangerous it is when you say things that are not fake news just because you don't like them are fake news.
It's just, I mean, and Caitlin's pointing out, there's more to the clip. He then later goes on and denies that he even had even denied it. I mean, it's just, you can't even wrap your head around it. It's difficult for journalists to operate in this environment.
And Trump did it and won. I mean, not to blame everything on Trump. There are lots of other things wrong with our political culture, and one can criticize Hillary Clinton and others, but I mean, the fact that Trump got away with it, you just can't, and has sort of gotten away with it as president, not entirely, of course, but continues to do it, let's say, as president. That's an awfully big deal.
And it's reportedly the president is telling people that it's not his voice on the Access Hollywood tape, where the guy he said it to, Billy Bush, said, of course that was him. We all know it was him. We heard the voice. He acknowledged that it was him.
He admitted it was him.
He said it was him, and he apologized back in October before the election. So it is one of these things where who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? And the problem is, P.T. Barnum was right, or President Lincoln was right. You can fool some of the people all of the time. And that's what our polling is showing us. How small is the irreducible sum of people who you can just flat out lie to every day?